What's your current check-in for that?
Well, I think even when thoughts arise, like, well, a couple of things. First, yes, you're so right. Like, I track my cycle, so I will always know. And I can usually predict, like, oh, well, I'm heading into that week. It'll probably come up. And it usually does. Like, there'll usually be some thoughts. But actually, more interestingly, I find that I usually use the thoughts as an actual check engine light, as in I see it as like a check engine light that perhaps what else is going on, because I wore that path for so many years that when I was dissatisfied in my body, very often there was also other stuff going on. I could have been dissatisfied in other areas of my life. Other things were stressing me out. They weren't going right. And what do we tend to do? We tend to move to what we think we can control, which of course can tend to be our body, our weight, for a lot of us. So that was a well-worn path for me for many years. So I actually use it as a bit of a check engine light to be like, what the hell else is going on here? Like, am I feeling a bit disconnected from in my marriage at the moment? Am I finding things a lot at work? Like, what else is going on? And very often there's something else that's going on, and my brain just goes, whoop, maybe you need to lose weight. Like, you see it all the time, right? And then I suppose the other piece then is like, you know, I kind of, what happens when it arises is very often like, and I kind of have learned how to play with it a little bit, in the sense that for me, one of the approaches has been to like sometimes meet it with a bit of humor, like in the way that like we access humor in the same place that we access connection and safety in our ventral vagal. So I find that sometimes having nearly a little bit of crack with those thoughts, because I kind of say like, look, did you have these thoughts yesterday, or you were out last week and you felt great and you weren't even thinking like this? So can I go back and just even like visit in my body a time in the last recent past where I felt absolutely fine in my body? And I remember a time, and I go back there and I'm like, oh yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, oh, I was grand. So this is something that's going on. My perception has shifted. Maybe it's my mood state, because we know all of that will impact our thoughts, right? So what's going on in my nervous system? What's going on in my mood? What's going on that maybe is bringing this thought into my conscious awareness? And what shifts do I need to make to kind of come back in? It's really a process of redirecting. Like, I'm constantly redirecting my thoughts. I'm like, oh, there I go off again in a tangent, thinking I might start intermittent fasting next week. Oh no, wait, I'm not doing that again. I'm not going back there, because I would never, you know, again, it's like I wouldn't jeopardize. I've played with it a couple of times in earlier years where I was like, maybe now I could be someone that diets. It's amazing how, I guess, look, there's been a firm imprint from somebody that dieted so, rigidly, and I suppose had such bad binge eating for so many years that, like, even sometimes the thoughts of me going and thinking about a diet can actually create urgency in my system, where I would find that actually I feel a little bit like chaotic with chocolate. Whereas, like, you know, I have all this food in my house all of the time and I couldn't give a flither about it. Like, it's not a problem for me anymore. I feel really lucky to be able to say that. But it's interesting how even sometimes, like, playing with the thoughts or, allowing them in and maybe latching onto them even for a couple of moments, I can feel it in my body. I can feel there's a response there. And I mean, sometimes people might say like, oh, well, if you just created enough safety, or if you just done enough nervous system regulation work, maybe you could be somebody that could diet effectively and safely. And I'm not saying that that's not a possibility, but for me now in my life, it just wouldn't be something that a path I would go down, because I just feel like I've too much of a good life with the way things are. So it's just not much of a priority. That's not to say though, of course, that like, you don't have thoughts. I mean, everybody knows, like, we're, heading into Christmas or whatever it is, and you've got your Christmas nights out and you've got your this, that, or you've got weddings coming up or whatever it is. I mean, you're trying on outfits. Of course I can have thoughts of like, which is if I had a small bit less here or a small bit less here, wouldn't that make it easier? And sure, look, maybe it would, but is it something that I'm going to follow? No.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I think the self-awareness around it is key, and knowing what your check-ins are. What I'm hearing you say there, which is very identical to my framework internally, is the redirection of control. Normally I find that when I'm getting, and mine show up differently now, sometimes it's body composition, but for me it's normally business, finances, etc. I'm like, okay, it's when I've lost a sense of control elsewhere, in my relationship, at home, in work, it's somewhere, there's something else that's feeling scattered, and you're going to the default. I know how to exercise more, I know how to make money. These are two things I can pull the lever on at any point, and it's normally a check-in for, okay, you're out of alignment or you're dysregulated in another area. Look over here, hey, shiny light over here, like, and you're looking at every direction. You're going to the familiar path. It's Neural Pathways 101 that you go down the familiar path. So So I think checking in with that for people